If we examine the structures of power in America and the inequality that exists here in Philadelphia, we must begin with housing, because housing has never been neutral. Where people were allowed to live determined access to safety, education, employment, and wealth. And for Black Philadelphians, that access was controlled by law, by policy, and by design. After the Civil War, freedom arrived without protection. Across the country, Black codes were enacted, laws that restricted where Black people could live, work, and move. They criminalized unemployment, they punished independence, and they made poverty enforceable. These laws allowed Black people to be arrested, fined, and forced into labor for simply existing without white supervision. As the laws evolved, the logic remained. By the early 20th century, housing discrimination took on a modern, federally sanctioned form: redlining. Redlining refers to a policy developed in the 1930s through the Homeowners Loan Corporation. That federal government created residential security maps to guide bank lending. Neighborhoods were graded based on perceived risk. In Philadelphia, neighborhoods with Black residents were almost always graded D and outlined in red. That designation carried consequences. Redline neighborhoods were denied mortgages, denied home repair loans, denied investment. Race, not income, not housing condition, determined access. In Philadelphia, redlining shaped neighborhoods across the city, including Fairhill, Strawberry Mansion, Nicetown Tioga, Gray's Ferry, Point Breeze, and sections of Kensington and North Philadelphia. At the same time, white families were ushered into home ownership through federally backed programs such as the GI Bill following World War II. Black veterans were largely excluded. This is how the racial wealth gap was created, not by chance, through policy. But housing policy did more than restrict wealth. It reshaped how we lived. When access to stable housing was denied, we developed a culture built around interdependence. Because housing was unstable, families became expansive. Homes became multi-generational by necessity. Grandparents, parents, and children sharing space, resources, and responsibility. Because capital was inaccessible, trust became currency. Neighbors pooled resources. Informal lending replaced bank loans. Churches became financial anchors, providing food, assistance, and support when formal institutions refused us. Because space was limited and often surveilled, life moved outward. Stoops became meeting places. Living rooms became organizing sites. Blocks became systems of accountability and care. This is where block culture formed. This is where neighborhood loyalty deepened. This is where community became infrastructure. Because homes could not accumulate wealth, they accumulated people. And from that density came culture, language, music, humor, rhythm, style, shared across walls, reinforced daily, passed down orally. This is the culture redlining produced, not collapse, interdependence. It was within this reality, in 1917, that the Urban League of Greater Philadelphia was founded. The League emerged because Black families needed institutional support to survive housing discrimination, employment exclusion, and economic instability. The mission was clear: stabilize families, expand opportunity, and confront systems that deny both. For more than a century, the Urban League has worked within and alongside the culture of interdependence, supporting housing stability, advocating for equity, and strengthening communities shaped by exclusion. That culture still exists today. We see it when neighbors resist displacement, when communities organize against gentrification, when people fight not only for housing, but for the right to remain connected. Redlining withheld wealth. It destabilized housing. It reshaped the city, but it also forged a culture that understands survival as a shared responsibility. Understanding this history means recognizing what was taken and what was built in response. Because what communities created under constraint is not something to erase, it is something to protect.